Hello everybody and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program, where we currently need to do a little bit of a rendezvous around Eve for our contract. We're going to do that real quick. I want to use the same craft that we sent out there to rendezvous with, and we're just going to grab the... Let's see, this is the Kerbal transferer, right? Yes, that would be this guy. So we're going to load this and we're going to make a couple of minor changes. Now, this one is going to be intended to return. So we're going to drop the relay antenna. We're going to actually... Hang on, I'm just thinking here. I was thinking about dropping this tank entirely. No, we wanted to make this empty, though. So we wanted to do something like this. We're going to need an antenna on here for sure. And we're going to also need... So let's get that antenna on there. We're going to need parachutes. So we're going to go for a Mark 16. We're going to go for a couple of radial mount drogues. And honestly, that's sufficient. So this would get us there and get us home. Should be fine. But we need to be able to dock to this. So I'm actually going to ditch the Mark 16 parachute. We need a grab arm here. So we need to go into coupling, and I think a grabbing unit junior would be good enough. Yes, I'm going to move our drogue chutes to be located here. And then I'm going to place 2 main chutes. So that would be these bad boys right here. And that should do the trick. We shouldn't need anything else. Although we might want to bring an engineer rather than a pilot, just to make sure that this is all going to be fine. So let's do that. I also want to think about bringing some RCS here. Actually, that'll be very convenient for moving around. So we would put in our command and control here, actually in our fuel tanks, we would grab an RCS fuel tank like that, and then we would just put in some very, very minor RCS thrusters. So like 4 of these, something like so. That should do the trick. So that'll give us some RCS to work with. We'll save this, we'll put this out on the pad, and we just want to get this thing launched and transferred as soon as possible. So I know that MechJeb has a capability to wait on the ground rather than in orbit for a proper phase to transit. I want to try out that system. I don't think I've ever tried that before. So let's see how that works. We know that we need to select a target for a timed launch, right? So if we set our target, does that work for something like Eve? Actually, it does. So we can do a launch to rendezvous. This is in degrees. Okay, I don't know how that's going to work. That'll be interesting. This is a button here, so what happens if we press that? Launching to rendezvous in T-minus 1 hour, 6 minutes. So I guess that's telling us when we have to do our launch here. I'll engage the autopilot. It's now warping us forward. Interesting. So about 30 minutes, 20, 10, 5 minutes. It's reducing our time warp now. Yep, that appears to all be correct. And it'll launch us in about 11 seconds. So in theory, I don't have to do anything here. I'm not touching the keyboard. We'll see what MechJeb does. It lifts us off on time. Cool. So, I mean, that's very simple, right? No doubt about that. What's going to be really interesting is seeing how exactly this resulting orbit works, and how long it's going to take us to get a decent, like how many phases it's going to take us to get a decent transfer over to Eve. That's all going to be very interesting to find out. It did have us wait about an hour there. And we can actually see here, this is towards target, right here. So probably we're going to want to just burn towards target basically immediately, I think. This should only be ascent, putting us into a 100-kilometer orbit. That's all that should do in theory. We'll see how real that is. But we may need to go into our maneuver planner and get assist. But this probably isn't going to work until we're in a proper orbit, is my guess. So we're going to wait on the maneuver planner for now. I'll just stick it down over here where we can keep a bit of an eye on it. And we'll move the Smart ASS down a bit as well. When it's in auto mode like this, it is a lot smaller than when it's in normal mode. So that's absolutely fine. We are definitely picking up some speed here. Okay, we're in coast phase now. Got it. So coast phase is absolutely fine, right? We're just going to head on forward here. Coasting up to the edge of space, as it says here, edge of atmosphere. So 70 kilometers is when we will deploy all of this stuff and when it'll create the circularization maneuver. Personally, I would create it now, but that's because it takes me time to create it, and that'll be a whole thing. So according to this, the lowest delta V, now that we're in space, this is calculating, the lowest delta V departure is in over a year. That's interesting. And I believe we're also launching into a 90-degree inclination. Or rather, a 0-degree inclination. So directly equatorial. Fascinating. I would have expected, with choosing the target there, for it to depart us in about this amount of time and into an inclination that is matching with the target. But apparently that's not how MechJeb works. So that is absolutely fine. So this is our lowest delta V, and ASAP would be, you know, a whole lot faster. We don't really care so much about that. So we're going to be doing this, but I'm going to wait until after this circularization burn anyway. Oh, we have some staging issues here. Okay, that's reasonably fine. Really, all this is we need to split out our drogue chutes, right? And we definitely need to limit our gimbal on this down to 10 degrees. We'll limit our gimbal on this down to 30 degrees, and then this up here should be fine. We know that that's okay. No major problems there. I do want to grab our drogue chutes here and move them down. It's a little bit... Oh, no, it's not odd at all, because we took all the fuel out of this tank. I was going to say, why are we not getting Delta V here? Well, because we removed the fuel. That would make sense, wouldn't it? We've got more than enough fuel to get there. I'm not concerned. Our capture burn is 2134, so in meters per second. So that's really not bad, including capture burn. So, I mean, this is going to be a lengthy departure. I expected MechJeb to delay our departure until at least closer to this time. It did delay it for an hour, I suppose. So I guess it's because it's only looking in this phase for that delay. That's good to know. So that's not really intended for interplanetary transfers, I'm pretty sure. Cool. So we're just going to get this last little bit of Delta V done here as we circularize into our orbit. No problem whatsoever. We can ditch our ascent guidance. That's no longer necessary. And we are fully in orbit. It's not a perfectly circular 100-kilometer orbit, but it's good enough. So we're going to reset this, and we want the lowest Delta V. Periapsis of 100 kilometers is actually not what we want. So our periapsis that we want is going to be a lot higher than that. Let's hop on over to Eve. And let's take a look here. So this is in kilometers, right? So this is currently 11 million meters. So for kilometers, we can lop off 1,000 of that. So this is 11,770 kilometers. I want to target at least 12,000 kilometers. I'm thinking maybe like 15,000. Something like this. So we'll create that node. That inclination is wild, but that does kind of work. Kinda. Let's think about 20,000 kilometers. I mean, even that, this is like 50,000. Let's go for the 50,000. Let's go for the big one. So we're going to remove all nodes and create node. Okay, that's not actually within. So we'll go for like 40,000. Okay, yeah. It's very confused about this altitude. Which it shouldn't be, right? It really shouldn't be. Remove all nodes. Create node. Okay, so that's going to be in 2 years, 199 days, with a 259-day transit duration. So we know that this is not going to be probably exact. MechJeb is probably going to mess this up in some meaningful way. We'll line over to the node, but we'll have MechJeb actually execute this node. So that'll be fine. This will be a very high orbit, which is good. That's actually what we want for matching planes with the Kerbal transferer, the other Kerbal transferer, and that'll be perfect. So we're just going to execute this next node. And MechJeb is definitely going to warp us for a while here. So I'm going to be cutting out that time warp. We're just going to head over here and then time warp. This number keeps going up. I don't like that. You know what? I'm going to do this differently. We're not going to do this from here. We're just going to launch out towards Eve, and then once we're out of Kerbin's orbit, we're going to use MechJeb at that point. I've completely changed my mind on this. We've had too many problems with it, and I don't like what that maneuver was doing. So we're going to want to launch towards the sun, so we want to burn prograde around here. And we'll just do this the old-fashioned way for now. Oof, that's a moon encounter. Okay. And that pushes us in way too far. Okay, so we'll do this after an orbit. We know this is going to be a while, right? Before we need to do this burn. We've got some phasing time. So we'll toss in an orbit here, and we are going to bring this guy right on back. Keeping an eye on this. That does give us a gravity assist, I suppose. And we don't know what our resulting orbit is going to look like. But okay, we'll align for this. I don't like doing it this way necessarily, but it's fine. So we're going to need to warp around, of course, but we're physics warping for now as we get around to this node. And let's just do it this way. This will make things a lot less complicated. So away you go for now, MechJeb. We're just going to use the Smart ASS feature for the moment. Okay, let's warp around, and we'll do this manually. So this is going to be about a full orbit here. Which is fine. We're just waiting until the moon is out of the way. We should require some phasing orbits anyway, and we'll see what this ends up doing for how long we're going to have to wait. It might be more, it might be less, I don't know. But MechJeb should be a lot more accurate at that point. So I don't think we'll need the advanced transfer to another planet either. We're going to need just simply a bi-impulsive Hohmann transfer to target. I believe that's what we're going to need then. At that point. So that'll be fine. We'll figure that out when we get there. We've got a few seconds until this burn. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, mark. There we go. We'll physics warp the burn. And of course, we're not going to burn out all of this fuel. If we do, we've got problems because we did not fuel our nuclear engine. But we should easily get there without burning out all of this fuel. Very, very easily. So we've got about 40 seconds left on this burn. 30. 20. 10 coming out of physics warp now. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and good enough. Okay, we'll go on to kill rot, and the question now is, what does this orbit look like? I don't think we're impacting the moon. No, we're just flying by it. So we'll warp to here. It's 2 hours in the future, and we'll see what this orbit ends up looking like. Okay, sphere of influence of the moon now. Okay, a mildly awkward orbit, but I guess it'll do. So now we'll warp to here, and we'll just say, goodbye, moon, thank you for the gravity. We're kind of getting flung the wrong direction, but whatever. It's fine. loading back into the Kerbin sphere of influence. And now we just want to exit the Kerbin sphere of influence. So we're going to warp ahead to about here. So that'll be a nice 8-day warp. Cool. And then from there, we'll just look at what we can do. I mean, we could do an old-fashioned transfer and not use MechJeb for it at all. Honestly, at this point, we kind of might as well, I feel like. We're going to have a big inclination issue anyway. Out of curiosity, if we were out here and we did this. Okay. That's quasi-non-terrible. Indeed. And I didn't actually want that inclination change. I'm checking right now. Yeah, we do have a slight inclination issue. So I think that we should come out over here and do an inclination change. It looks like we're going to be in a quasi-okay time to do this, as long as we are in an even inclination. So something like that. We'll do a nice inclination change, and yeah, we'll do this without MechJeb. I think that sounds good. It doesn't look too bad as far as finding a rendezvous goes, all things considered. So this inclination change will be a big part of it. And of course, we're going to want a relatively minimal encounter, which means a fair amount of braking speed. And then we're going to need to do an inclination change once we get there to match planes with the kind of crazy inclination we're in right now. Oh, look at that. Hi, Kerbin. And Moon is sailing around out there too, along with Minmus. Yeah, there goes Moon. Hi, Moon. Actually, that might be Minmus. I don't know. Regardless, it doesn't really matter. We are going to get this inclination change done soon. We're going to have to match the other inclination, and then we're going to have to do a rendezvous event. So we'll have to circularize, match planes, and then do a rendezvous, and then it's fairly standard from there, right? Fairly standard rendezvous mechanics. So nothing too major here. We should have plenty of Delta V to get that all done. Not concerned about that. Even if we don't, as long as we get into an orbit around Eve, we can use the other craft, right? So that thing has plenty of Delta V left, but I'm not expecting to run into such issues. I was expecting this time warp to go a little faster, though. We're just chilling at 10,000x time instead of going to 100,000x. I don't know why, but okay. I guess this is what the auto warp wants to do. Waste everyone's time. Thank you, auto warp. Very helpful. We're just going to come on in here the extra minute, 40 seconds, 30, 20, 10, and 3, 2, 1, 0 mark. Cool. About a 30-second burn here to change our inclination and match planes. 10 seconds left coming out of the physics warp. 3, 2, 1, and that's good enough. Yep, that'll do. So now we were looking for an encounter from somewhere over here. Okay, it would be a little later than this. It's not going to be perfect in terms of our timing here. That's not hugely shocking, but we can get an encounter somewhere like there. That's really not bad. What would that encounter end up looking like? I mean, it's very equatorial. It's at about 28 million meters, which honestly, this is good. This'll do the trick. We can match planes with this guy. So we would circularize here, match planes with that. I don't know where the ascending-descending node on that one would be. That would be kind of exciting to figure out. But that's what KER is for. Or actually, that's just base game, isn't it? Yeah, that's in the base game. So no problem there. That'll be some math. But we're going to have a braking burn up here. The braking burn is going to be probably relatively hefty, but I don't think it's going to be too bad. We can take a quick preview of it. Oh, wow, that's really, really nice. That's almost no braking burn. That's way less than I was expecting. So circularization here is going to be 535. That's really good. I like it. We're not going to be going nearly as fast as I thought we were. Cool. So this burn is going to be in 400 days. It is going to be a fairly lengthy while before we get there. So I'm going to cut out this time warp, and we're going to head on in just a moment. Okay, so the warp is nearly over here. We've got about 5 days left, and now we've got 1 minute until our transfer burn. So let's warp on forward. 40 seconds, 30, 20, 10, and 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay, so this is going to be about a 1 minute burn. We'll physics warp our way through that. We're going to have a lot of leftover Delta V, and in fact, we could certainly arm this advanced grabbing unit, although it seems a mite premature at this point. We're still a little ways away, so we're going to disarm that for now. There's really not a point. There's not a point in not having it armed either, to be clear. So we've got 3, 2, 1, and I'm just trying to hit this last little bit relatively accurately here. I like what we have going on for this encounter, and I want to kind of nail it. So that's 0.0 meters per second, and yeah, that looks good. So we're just going to add a maneuver here. This is going to be a retrograde burn. We're looking to simply circularize at this point. We're not going to have any real interference with Gilly at this inclination either, so that's great. I love it. Now, when we change into our Kerbal transfer inclination, that's going to be a little awkward, but that'll be a relatively hefty burn, to be honest. So we're going to line up for this, and that's going to be in 182 days, which is an awkward amount of transit time, to be honest. That's like right below my threshold of what I consider is worth cutting out for time warps. Oh, that's an awkward amount of time. I consider that threshold to be 200 days, so I guess we'll just continue to go along here, but it's really borderline. It's really borderline. But that's fine. The real question is, how much is this inclination change going to cost in terms of Delta V? I don't think it's going to be that bad. Wait, which way are we going here? We're coming this direction. Okay, we are not coming in retrograde to this thing. Good. I'm glad I checked that. Would have been awkward. It wouldn't have been impossible, but it would have been awkward. We would have had to adjust this orbit for sure. Just go to a minimal orbit and then reverse course up here and then come back down. It would have been a whole thing, but it's not that much Delta V, actually, to flip your orbit. You'd be a little surprised how little Delta V it can be, to be honest. So we're going to commence our braking burn here very shortly. 40 seconds, 30, 20, 10, and 3, 2, 1, 0, mark. Cool. So if we did need to flip our orbit, which I believe that we don't, but if we did need to flip our orbit, what we would do is we would stop this braking burn the moment we are in orbit and no longer have escape velocity. Then we would just go to the apoapsis and burn retrograde until our orbit flips and we push it back out. It would become prograde and we push it back out to about this height. So we'd stop here and then we burn retrograde at the apoapsis there. Now, we're not actually doing that, because I'm pretty sure we're coming in correctly here, but that would be the technique that we would use for that. Okay. We'll call this good enough for circularization purposes. The next question is, how far off are we? 17.8 degrees. Yeah, that's a little ways, but it's not hideously expensive. Cool. Not that way. Now, we're going to probably have to throw in some retrograde at this point because of the sheer amount of distance that we have to cover for this. Okay, so something like that. 166.6, that's really not bad. I expected that to be substantially worse. And looking at the Gilly orbit, I think we're not going to have any Gilly interference either. Okay, let's line up for that inclination change. That'll be in about 1 day. No problem whatsoever. So we'll just get lined up there. Where is Eve? There is Eve. Hi, Eve. You are very far away indeed. Okay. And of course, we're going to steal all of the fuel out of that thing too before we leave. That's the plan anyway. Let's warp on forward and let's get this inclination change done. So that's about a minute away. There we go. 3, 2, 1, 0, mark. There's only a 10-second burn on this inclination change. This is way cheaper than I expected it to be, but to be honest, the reason for this is because we're in such a big orbit. Inclination changes are more expensive the deeper you go. How is that? 0.2? It's not perfect exactly, but it's probably good enough. So now we would look to get ourselves an encounter, and that would be coming in something like this, but we would just look for when we wanted to do it. So something like that. It's going to be a relative speed of 227.4. That's not bad. Yeah, this is absolutely fine. So we could definitely dial that in a little bit, right? We could find a slightly better time. We could attempt to move it closer by dialing in these numbers, but it really doesn't matter. 44 kilometers is close enough. We can get there with corrective burns. It is, however, time to put a cut in here, so I'm going to go ahead and do that, and next episode, we're going to get this rendezvous done, and I'm also hoping to bring Bill back home next episode. We're going to have to go a little quick to get that done. We'll see. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and a very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this video possible, including ALS Gamer, Atalet, Shadowwolf, Mlohan80, Rogue Corvid, Kintogan, Andy McGar, Spartan News, Nick Smarty, Dimitri H, Punching the Microphone, Soccerman12 UK, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click the join button down below the video, and as always, I will see you all next time.